So just for a little refresher, we started out by saying, hey, we can see working with a number of clients that there are a bunch of reasons, and Lance went over some of these excuses in the first video we made for this series about how and why inbound leads might get missed or not worked on as much as they should. But we figured out we're wasting them too, so we could go ahead and hold ourselves accountable by doing an experiment.
It's the hardest thing in my life is to stick to a process. I think you know that's why you bit on this experiment idea. You're like, we can make Lance stick to a process for a month and he has to be publicly accountable.
That's very true.
So far, so good.
We are now through week 2 of the experiment. For the benchmark data set, we had 100 leads come in. 15 were what we called qualified. 5 were contacted. So that's a big number we're trying to improve, where 15 were qualified, but only 5 of the 15 were actually reached out to. 4 had meetings, which is a really good number from there. 1 turned into a proposal. 1 turned into a customer for a monthly recurring revenue of $3,200. So the numbers are really good when we get someone to a meeting and down. We just want to make sure we don't miss anyone above that. That's part of the genesis of this experiment. When we look at the actual experiment through week 2, we have 37 contacts, 9 are qualified. Therefore, 9 have been contacted, so we fixed that issue. 2 meetings have occurred, and no proposals or customers yet. So if you look at some of the improvements we've made so far, we were contacting 5% of total leads that came in our benchmark. We're now contacting 24% of our leads that came in. As you go further down the funnel, we had meetings with 4% of our leads that came through. Now that number's 5%. So Lance, through 2 weeks of this experiment, tell us a little bit about what you've been doing, what you've been seeing, the reactions you've been getting.
Basically, my process is in the morning, I have my list in HubSpot about the recent contacts. I start at the oldest and go through to the newest. I click on the email and I make sure that looks like a legitimate email. In HubSpot, it pulls up the company name over on the right side, like related companies. So I can go check the website. I try to make a determination based on what I see there in just a few seconds, whether they're even a B2B company. If they're not, I just go back and mark them unqualified, take them out of our list. If, though, that it looks like they're a good fit based on our criteria that we've listed, I spend probably like about 30 seconds, and that's it, on their website. Because my goal isn't necessarily to impress them with my knowledge of their company. That's what the calls are for later. It's basically just to figure out just enough that when I do the video, I can like connect something. Then I spin up Vidyard and I start recording. My goal is to help the person figure out immediately that I'm talking to them, not just some random base video. I introduce myself as the founder of Nectafy, which I never use that kind of lingo. You know that. Make a big deal about what I think they do. And then I quickly just transition to Nectafy works with companies a lot like you to deliver some pretty amazing stuff, especially if you think you have an industry that you can't have somebody write for. There's a real opportunity there. And then I say, I would love to have a chance just to answer your questions. That part has gone pretty well. There are a few people who don't open the email. And for some reason, there are a couple of people who have opened the email that haven't clicked on the video. I can't imagine why they wouldn't do that, just out of pure curiosity. One thing I noticed, so we had a meeting booked this last week, and essentially the tone of the book, the meeting, like comments, why we're booking the meeting, he said, I think you're right in the video. We're probably too early to work with you guys, but I'd love to hear how you guys work for the future. So that's pretty interesting. So I think what's happening there is I'm basically opening the door to start a conversation earlier.
Has there been any interaction from the follow-up on LinkedIn or those follow-up email messages you do a few days after?
had some brief conversation, but my LinkedIn connects are not designed to be like a trigger point for a sales conversation at this point. I feel like that feels a little weird. I don't want to be that guy. For me, it's about like connecting one human to another, not like I'm going to have you sign this document in this LinkedIn message. It's more like I'm a person, you're a person. Let's see if there's some way we want to have a conversation later.
Over the benchmark, we have closed the gap on actually contacting people versus qualified. So 5% of all of our leads that came in have been qualified in the benchmark, and that number is at 24% now. So that's improved a lot. We're still trying to figure out after 2 weeks and 37 new leads if that number's going to push down into the real important ones.
You and I have talked about that before. We know that part of the sales process gets pretty complex.
But it's interesting. We could learn something either way here, where the benchmark, we're improving the amount of people we're contacting, but we could end up learning that we're not improving the amount of meetings or clients we're getting, because maybe in the benchmark, you naturally picked off the right fits because you know what you're doing. That's something we could learn too, because we'd save on wasted effort. Come on back next week. We will post week 3 data. If you want to make sure you receive that, in this article at the bottom, we'll have an option to subscribe, and we'll send you the updates from here forward.
Yeah, come back. Blah, 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 blah for something for this company, right?